For my 48th birthday, my wife said, "You'll love this one. Just trust me." My daughter winked. My son laughed. I took the day off work, got dressed up, came home early. The house was empty. No balloons. No dinner. Just silence. 4 hours later, I saw a photo online, my entire family at a lakeside retreat without me. The caption read, "Finally some peace and quiet." My son commented, "Bet he's still staring at the oven clock." 4 days later, my phone lit up with 53 missed calls. But I was already somewhere they'd never find me. They spent weeks hyping it up. My wife Rachel, our kids, her parents, even her younger sister Nina with her obnoxious new boyfriend Tyler. Every time I brought up plans for my 48th birthday, someone would say, "Oh, just wait. You're going to love it." Rachel was the worst offender. She'd give me this little half smile and tilt her head like I was being silly for asking. "Be patient," she whispered the night before, brushing lint from my shoulder, kissing my temple like I was a child waiting on Santa. It had been a rough year, and they knew it. Business at the shop had been slow. My mother passed away last spring. The house needed new gutters. Rachel had started taking long walks alone after dinner, claiming she needed to decompress, which was new. But still, birthdays had always been a big deal in our house. Especially mine. I wasn't just the dad. I was the guy who cooked every holiday meal, who changed tires in the snow, who remembered everyone else's birthdays by heart. So I believed them. I let myself believe them. I took the day off work, first time in months. I even skipped my Thursday golf meet with the guys, something Rachel had told me I should cut back on to be more present. That morning, I showered, shaved clean, and dressed slow and careful. Gray blazer, dark jeans, and the silver cufflinks Rachel had given me on our 10th anniversary. I even pulled out the leather watch I usually saved for dinners or church. I drove home around 4 p.m., earlier than I said I would. I wanted to give them time to surprise me, but I also didn't want to miss it if they were planning something sweet or personal. The driveway was empty except for my son's beat-up sedan. The house looked quiet, curtains drawn, no decorations visible from the outside. But I figured, maybe that's part of it. Maybe they're waiting inside with the lights off, balloons, maybe even some friends from work hiding behind the kitchen counter with cheap streamers and bad wine. I smiled as I put the key in the door. The house was dead silent. No music. No voices. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the living room clock. I called out once. "Hello?" Nothing. I stepped in fully, looked around. The hallway was clean, not a shoe out of place. No smell of dinner cooking, no signs of activity. I walked into the kitchen. Empty. No note on the table. No birthday cake in the fridge. No signs of anyone being there recently. I checked the back patio. Nothing. I went upstairs. All the beds made. Closets untouched. It felt like walking into a house after the owners had moved out. I pulled my phone from my jacket pocket. No missed calls. No messages. I called Rachel. Straight to voicemail. I texted her, "Hey, I'm home. Everything okay?" I sent a similar message to both kids. Nothing. I sat at the kitchen island. The granite felt cold beneath my hands. I poured myself 2 fingers of Glenlivet, the one I'd been saving since Christmas. It was supposed to be for the toast tonight. The ice melted slowly as I waited, staring at the oven clock. 4:17. 4:34. 5:09. My phone stayed dark. Something wasn't right. And still I waited. By the time the clock struck 6, I was no longer sipping. I was staring at nothing, really. The bottle of scotch was still mostly full, but the glass in my hand had been refilled twice. The silence in the house felt suffocating. Not peaceful. Not quiet. Hollow. I walked the perimeter of the house again like maybe I'd missed something the first time. Maybe there was a sign taped to the door I hadn't noticed. Maybe someone had left a note by the coffee maker. A voicemail I hadn't heard. But there was nothing. Still no messages. Still no returned calls. My texts to Rachel and the kids sat in limbo, unread. I stared at the family photo wall in the hallway. All of us smiling, summer vacation in Maine, Rachel squinting into the sun, the kids sticky with cotton candy, me holding a fishing rod and looking ridiculous in that too-tight hat she made me wear 4 laughs. I touched the frame. The glass was cold. At 6:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a notification from a photo-sharing app one rarely used. My coworker Lenny had tagged me in something. I opened it, expecting something light, a meme, maybe a work joke. What I saw instead made my stomach drop. A photo, just posted minutes earlier. Rachel was in a sundress I hadn't seen before, drink in hand, standing under a lakeside pergola strung with fairy lights. The sun was dipping behind her in a golden wash, and our two kids were mid-laugh, splashing someone in the background. Her sister Nina posed beside her, mouth wide open, holding a pink cocktail. Everyone was there. Everyone but me. My father-in-law, wearing the same wide-brimmed hat he always bragged about bringing back from Cabo. My son's beat-up sedan wasn't in our driveway because he'd driven it out to the lake. Even Tyler, that human allergy of a boyfriend, was doing a cannonball into the water behind them. The caption read, "Family escape weekend. Finally some peace and quiet lol." But it was the comment that truly made the air leave my lungs. My son. My boy. He'd commented. "Bet Dad's still staring at the oven clock." I reread it. Once. Twice. I clicked on Rachel's profile. They'd posted more photos. Boating. Board games. Margaritas at sunset. A whole weekend, maybe more, clearly planned well in advance. Packed bags. Lodging. Coordinated outfits. And not a single word to me. I scrolled through the comments, looking for any sign of guilt, or hesitation, or even acknowledgement. Instead, I found more jokes. Rachel's sister replied with a "he'll be fine" and a laughing emoji. Someone else added, "He needed a nap anyway." That was the moment I felt something inside me go very still. I didn't get angry. I didn't throw the phone. Didn't yell. Didn't even cry. I just stood there in the kitchen, in the house I paid for, wearing the watch Rachel gave me for our anniversary, in the shirt I'd ironed that morning for what I thought was a celebration. The scotch sat on the counter, a melting ring of condensation beneath it. I turned off my phone. Put it face down. Then I walked upstairs. Packed a small overnight bag. 2 shirts. My toothbrush. My laptop. Nothing that required thought. I left the gray blazer on the hook behind the bedroom door. By 7:30, I was backing out of the driveway. I drove through town with the windows down, letting the spring air wash over me. No music. No GPS. Just the rumble of the road. I didn't have a plan, but I knew one thing with absolute clarity. I wasn't going to be there when they came home. Not this time. I didn't drive far that night. Just far enough that the lights of our town faded in the rearview mirror and the silence felt different, less suffocating, more open. I ended up in a small town about 45 minutes north, the kind of place with one main street and more antique stores than restaurants. I parked outside a modest inn called the Cedar Nest. The sign had a carved bird on it, wings outstretched, like it was mid-escape. I paid for 2 nights in cash and signed in under the name David Marcus, the alias I used back in college when my buddies and I pulled dumb pranks at bowling alleys. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She handed me a brass key, not a card, and pointed me to the second floor. Room 204 had floral wallpaper, a queen bed with a dark green quilt, and a faint smell of cedar and lemon cleaner. The kind of room where no one would ever think to look for me. I sat on the edge of the bed and just existed. No TV. No scrolling. Just me, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, and the sense of something final cracking open inside me. The next morning, I woke to birdsong and sunlight pushing through thin curtains. I didn't rush to check my phone. I had turned it off, buried it at the bottom of my bag, and told myself I wouldn't touch it for at least 48 hours. Instead, I walked into town. Got a coffee from a local shop where the barista greeted me like I was a regular. Sat in the park by the little pond and watched ducks glide across the water. It was simple. Quiet. Something I hadn't felt in years. By noon, I was back in my room. I pulled out my laptop and started making lists. Nothing grand, just thoughts. Plans. Names. I wrote down what was in our joint account last I checked. I wrote down the passwords I knew she had access to. I wrote down the lawyer's name who helped my coworker with his divorce last year. I remembered his office was near the courthouse and that he liked bourbon. That seemed like a good place to start. I wasn't angry. I was planning. There's a difference. That night, I ordered a steak from the diner across the street and ate it while reading an old spy novel I'd brought but never cracked open. By the time the sun went down, I felt something in my chest that I hadn't felt since I was a much younger man, clarity. Cold, sharp clarity. On the second morning, I turned my phone back on. 53 messages. 12 missed calls from Rachel. 6 from our daughter. 4 from our son. The rest were spread between her sister, her dad, and one from my brother-in-law who never texts me unless he wants to borrow something. The first few messages were smug. Okay, joke's over. Where are you? You could have just driven out here. We saved you a slice of cake. Lighten up. You're the one who always says you hate parties. Then they got worried. We just got back and the house is empty. Where are you? Can you just tell us you're okay? Please, just one message. I feel awful. It was supposed to be funny. We didn't think you'd take it this way. Finally, they shifted to desperate. Dad, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean that comment. I was just messing around. Rachel's crying. We've called the police, but they said since you're an adult and nothing's illegal, they can't do anything. Just tell us you're safe. Please. We love you. I read them all. Not because I wanted to, but because it was important. Evidence, in a way. Not of wrongdoing. But of intent. Of their mindset. That comment about me staring at the oven clock? No one had deleted it. That photo? Still up. I sat back in the creaky chair by the window, sipped the coffee I'd bought earlier, and looked out over Main Street. The inn was quiet. The world was still turning. But something in me had shifted for good. They'd made their move. Now, it was time for mine. By the third morning, I knew I wasn't going back, not in the way they were hoping. Not with an apology in my mouth or flowers in my hands. I wasn't going to fall into the role they'd boxed me into for years, the dependable fool who forgave before anyone finished explaining. The birthday stunt had just been the final straw. The tipping point after years of paper cuts. Smirks when I didn't get their jokes. Side eyes when I mentioned bills. Apologies wrapped in sarcasm. I extended my stay at the Cedar Nest for another 3 days. Still paid in cash. Still, David Marcus. The woman at the front desk smiled as she handed me a fresh key card. I smiled back and said nothing. That afternoon, I called my lawyer. Not the one from years ago who helped us with the mortgage. This was someone new. A recommendation from the guy I used to play racquetball with, James Hutchins, family law specialist. I remembered he once told me, I don't represent victims. I represent people who've had enough. I figured he'd understand. We met the next day in a little office above a bakery. I wore a hoodie and sunglasses. Paranoia? Maybe. But I didn't want to risk Rachel or her family catching wind of what I was doing before it was ready. James listened without interrupting. No fake empathy. No hand-wringing. Just calm, practiced attention. I showed him screenshots of the photos. The comments. The texts. I explained how long I'd been kept in the dark about the lake house trip. He didn't flinch. Just asked, do you want to stay married, or do you want to be free? Free, I said without hesitation. Then we build quietly, he said. You're not punishing her. You're preserving yourself. That line stuck with me. Over the next 48 hours, we worked fast. I opened a new checking account. Moved my direct deposit there. Set up new passwords for every financial institution we had joint ties to. Rachel wouldn't even notice for a few weeks, not until her Amazon auto payments started bouncing. I returned to our house late one night, long after I was sure no one would be home. I crept through the back door with my old keys, heart thudding like a thief in my own home. I grabbed my personal documents, birth certificate, passport, the title to my car. A few sentimental things too. A photo of my late mother. A box of handwritten letters she'd left me. My old baseball glove. I noticed they hadn't even bothered to bring back the balloons from the lake house. There was a party streamer still stuck to the fridge, half torn. I stood there in the dim light of the kitchen, watching it flutter like it was mocking me. I locked the door behind me and left. Back at the inn, I started a spreadsheet. Not for money. For moments. I documented every time in the past 5 years Rachel had accidentally scheduled something over my plans. Every birthday forgotten, every holiday I cooked alone, every time the kids made jokes at my expense and Rachel just laughed along. It was long. On the 5th day, I finally responded to Rachel. Just one message. Come home. Alone. Tomorrow night. We need to talk. She replied within seconds. Yes. Of course. I'm so sorry. I could almost picture her scrambling. Fixing her hair. Rehearsing tears in the mirror. She probably thought she could walk in, apologize, and wrap me back up in the warm blanket of routine. That I'd fold at the sight of her crying. She had no idea how far gone I was. She didn't know I wasn't looking for closure. I was setting the stage. She arrived at 7:03 p.m. sharp, wearing the blue dress I'd once told her was my favorite. Hair curled just enough to look effortless. No makeup, but I knew her tricks, subtle touches to give the impression of raw emotion. When I opened the door, she gave me a look that landed somewhere between guilt and optimism. Hey, she said softly, like we were meeting after a long, difficult day instead of a deliberate betrayal. Come in, I said. She stepped inside cautiously, eyes scanning the living room. Everything looked just like she'd left it, except I'd taken down every single family photo. The blank walls weren't accidental. You've been here, she asked, almost hopefully. On and off. I didn't think you'd text. I thought, she trailed off, the practiced sadness in her voice showing cracks. I didn't fill the silence. Let her stew in it. We sat at the kitchen island, the same place I'd waited alone on my birthday. I offered her nothing. No drink, no small talk. I just placed a folder on the table and slid it toward her. She looked down, hesitated. What is this? Documentation. A breakdown of our joint finances. Passwords I've changed. And a draft of the separation agreement. Her face went still. She opened the folder with slow fingers, flipping through the pages. Her eyes widened at the third one, the spreadsheet with our financial transfers. I'd highlighted every irregular transaction she made in the last 6 months, including the recent $3,200 wire to her sister labeled Nina's tuition, even though Nina never went back to school. You've been tracking this? She asked, color draining from her face. I've been paying attention. That's different. She looked up at me, tears starting to brim in her eyes now, less practiced, more real. I didn't know you'd take it this far. I just thought, we needed a reset. The trip was supposed to be a joke. Something light. I didn't mean. Spare me, I said. Calm. Not cold, just finished. You meant for me to be the punchline. Again. But you miscalculated. This wasn't a reset. It was a reveal. Please, she whispered. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. This isn't about one weekend. This is about years of being invisible in my own home. This was just the first time you documented it in real time. She closed the folder slowly, as if handling something fragile. Her hands were trembling. What are you going to do? I'm not going to yell. I'm not going to fight. I'm going to untangle myself from this quietly. Legally. Cleanly. And you're going to let me. She started crying then. Not sobbing. The kind of cry where someone's trying to keep their mouth still but can't stop their chin from shaking. The kids. They'll be fine. I'm not disappearing. I'm just stepping away from being the man you assume will absorb everything and say nothing. She tried one last card. We love you. No, I said. You tolerate me. Until you don't. That ends now. She sat in silence after that. For a long time. Then, quietly, she asked, what do you want from me? To leave. For now. Go home to your parents. Tell them the joke went too far. She stood, still shaking, and walked to the door. She paused before opening it. Do they know? She asked. About the money. The account. I raised an eyebrow. They will. The door closed behind her like a final note. No slam. No click of drama. Just an end. I sat back down and finished the scotch I'd left untouched on my birthday. It tasted better this time. She left the house, but the storm she started didn't. Not even close. By the next morning, my phone had lit up with messages again, this time not from Rachel, but from her sister Nina, her father, and even her cousin Joel, who I hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. The common thread? Panic. Apparently, Rachel had underestimated how fast word travels in a tight family web. She tried to contain the fallout, telling them we were just going through a rough patch and that I was overreacting to a joke. But she hadn't counted on two things, her father checking his bank account, and me pulling the pin on my first grenade. The credit card used to book the lake house had been in my name, one she'd used just for emergencies years ago and somehow never returned. The $1,874 charge for the Airbnb, the boat rental, and groceries? I disputed it all. Fraud claim filed. The bank froze the card and sent a notice directly to her. Rachel hadn't realized I'd already removed her from every joint account and shut down the overdraft linked to my personal funds. That same morning, her father texted me directly. Is this true? You froze Rachel's account and pulled the charges from our trip? I replied. I froze my account. The one you've been using like a family piggy bank. Yes. No follow-up. Just silence. Then came the second strike. James, my lawyer, had prepared a set of certified letters. One to Rachel. One to her father, since his name had come up several times in our financial history, loan cosigner for a car she gifted to Nina, which I paid for. One to the HOA board, since Rachel had submitted renovation expenses without telling me. And one to the school board. See, Rachel worked part-time at the school district as an events coordinator. A mostly ceremonial job she got through a friend, paid for by tax money. And the school's ethics policy clearly stated that any misrepresentation of personal conduct, especially conduct made public, could be grounds for dismissal. So we sent them the photo. The one of everyone at the lake, captioned with the peace and quiet line, posted while her husband, me, was home, alone, under the impression that something special was coming. Along with a letter explaining the public nature of the behavior, and the use of funds from a contested financial account. I wasn't looking to ruin her. But I wasn't going to shield her, either. That afternoon, Rachel called. I let it go to voicemail. Then she texted. I don't understand what you're doing. I told you I was sorry. Do we really have to involve lawyers? I replied simply. You involved them the moment you made me the punchline in front of everyone. Later that night, my daughter called. Unlike her mother, she didn't cry. She didn't plead. She asked one question, "Are you okay, Dad?" I paused before answering. I will be. Are you? She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then, I didn't know they planned it without you. I thought you were coming later. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. But it was something. Before we hung up, I asked her to take a look at the post again. Read it like someone who wasn't in on the joke, I said. Tell me what it looks like. The next morning, the post was gone. But the damage had already been done. Rachel tried to set up a meeting that week. At the same lake house, no less. Said we could talk face to face and move forward. They say silence is a weapon. That if you let it stretch long enough, people start filling it with their own guilt. Their own panic. Their own collapsing truths. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to curse or throw anything or post long monologues online. I just stayed silent. Rachel tried to reach me a dozen more times in the following week. Through texts. Through mutual friends. Even through our daughter, who I asked kindly once not to be used as a messenger. She respected that. The silence worked better than any reply ever could. And while Rachel scrambled to pick up the pieces, I built something new. I moved into a small condo in the west end of town. Clean lines. Quiet neighbors. A short walk to the park. Nothing fancy, but every item inside, every piece of furniture, every plate and fork and rug and photo, was chosen by me. No one argued about where to hang the frames. No one changed the thermostat behind my back. It was mine. The divorce proceedings went quickly. James made sure of that. Once Rachel realized the bank wasn't going to unfreeze the funds and her father wasn't going to bail her out again, she folded fast. We agreed on a split. She'd keep her car, some furniture, and whatever she hadn't tried to hide. I kept the house. The real house. The one they'd left me alone in on my birthday. The one she swore was too full of memories to stay in. She didn't realize I'd already sold it. Market had picked up, and James helped me negotiate a clean, fast deal, cash buyer, no contingencies. I got more than I expected. I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was hiding it. Because I didn't owe anyone anything anymore. I took a trip the day the sale closed. Flew to Portland. Rented a car. Drove the coast alone for 3 days. Ate seafood in silence. Watched the waves break over black rocks. Drank coffee in the mornings without checking my phone. On the third day, I took a picture of myself standing on a wooden deck overlooking the ocean. Wind in my hair. No forced smile. Just calm. I posted it. No caption. Just me. A few hours later, my son liked the post. Then messaged me. Hope you're doing all right, Dad. You look good. I am, I wrote back. Thanks. No lecture. No guilt. Just a line thrown across the water like a bridge that didn't need to be crossed yet. And Rachel? She emailed me last week. The subject line was blank. The message was short. You really didn't come back. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I miss you. I hate that it took losing you to see you. I didn't reply. She never understood the difference between being seen and being valued. Between being heard and being mocked. She had months to show me. Years, even. And she wasted every one of them. On the 1-year anniversary of the lake house weekend, I celebrated my 49th birthday alone by choice. I wore the same watch, drank a better scotch, and bought myself something they never managed to give me. Peace. And that was the real surprise. I didn't need a party. I needed an ending. And I gave it to myself.